All right, another episode of the RSL Random Fan Podcast. We have a special episode. We have the world famous David James from Channel 2 joining us on another episode. I'm your host, Brian Goebel, joined by Tyler Thomas. Brennan is out. You know, he's a young kid with a bad back. I don't know how that happens. But,
Poor guy.
Poor guy, absolutely. But thank you for joining us.
Lighting. This looks like our Halloween edition, which it nearly is. So it kind of works in a way, right? Like,
way to give away the theme, David.
we gotta work with the lighting crew here at the here in these studios. You guys look very professional, but
That's the goal.
issues here. Okay.
So we thought we'd reach out to you. We've chatted with you every season. Like to get your thoughts on how the season went. What's the story on the season, or what's the big story? There's lots of stories, but
There's lots of stories. I think the biggest story, it's pro sports, so it's about winning and losing. And I think the biggest story is 59 points is a new record for the club in the regular season. Fans pay their money, they go to games, they want to be entertained, and that usually involves winning. So get more points good, fewer points bad. Let's not outthink the room here. I would go with that as story number one. But having said that, there's a bunch of compelling stories. And the other beautiful thing about being a fan is, you like what you like. I would say the second compelling story is that, well, first off, I guess I would just not agree with your assumption. I guess that's what I would say, in that we are a playoff addicted society. So whatever happens in the regular season is great, but it's also trumped by whatever happens in the playoffs.
Yeah.
2009 RSL, look it up. I'm pretty sure it was 10 wins, 10 losses, 10 draws. It was super mediocre, and they snuck in on the last day, but they won the MLS Cup, so who cares?
Right.
They beat David Beckham and Landon Donovan in the final. I mean, who cares? Nick Raimondo saved 347 penalties. Who cares about the regular season record? So I guess that'd be the other thing is, like, let's not definitively say the story of the season, because the playoffs are such an important part of the season. Having said that, the regular season is done, and I would say that the 59 points is the big story.
Yeah.
I was
would
thinking
say
about
maybe
that.
The second story is the qualification for the Champions Cup, not Champions League anymore, right?
Yeah, which I don't
Champions
understand, but whatever.
Copyright.
I also don't understand the format, and I can't explain how everybody qualifies. I have a general idea, but they keep changing the format. I don't know.
Hey, they invited us. Who cares, right?
Well, I like that. I mean, if you tell me, Champions League, MLS regular season, MLS Cup, Open Cup, Leagues Cup, pretty much every competition you can play. If you can only win one, I would say, well, win the Champions Cup. I mean, I would even take it over the MLS Cup. The fact is, you can play for the MLS Cup every year, and it's just a huge achievement. And you get to play for the Champions Cup, every once in a while. I think this would be RSL's fourth trip. But personally, one of the things that, and first time in a long time. Personally, one of the things that really draws me into it is, I'm a soccer fan for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one is my son loved it, and we did it together. And as a parent, what's better than that, right? And the number one thing he loved about soccer was that it was international. It doesn't mean he didn't love the National Football League and the Green Bay Packers, because he did. But he loves international soccer, and the thought that his hometown team could play in this was a really big deal. And of all the memories, I have so many memories of watching soccer with him as a kid growing up. He's in his mid-20s now. But one of them was they played – do you guys remember when they played Cruz Azul in a torrential downpour in Mexico City?
5-5, and then
it's right. So there's so many goals, right? It's going back and forth, and it seemed like there were like 3 goals in the last 10 minutes or 5 minutes or something crazy. And it's just bedlam, and there's one more goal, and he screams and I scream, and Mom was downstairs with the youngest kid who was too young to be into it, and Mom, always the antenna up, comes running. Is somebody hurt? Is somebody like, no, it was another goal. She was pretty disappointed in us and our behavior. We were having a good time.
Yeah, I still remember that one of their last goals, they had a restart with the ball still rolling. And and I was just like, hey, that's not fair, but that's the way it goes.
There was also a huge lake at midfield, and at one point he pointed out, Dad, it kind of looks like a map of China. What? You're
Conspiracy
right.
theory.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a 1970s Premier League game or English
Yeah. Right.
league.
Right. Yeah.
Where they just
Yeah.
played through everything.
They play through everything. Now all the fields have such perfect drainage that, kids today, they have no idea how a field can turn into a big old pond, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
that's
now
the
they
favorite
invest so
part of
much
it.
in the drainage. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of interviewing guys like Dunny when we've had him on, and be like, wow, back in the day we had to have spray on butter and.
Uh,
So I was thinking about the season. And I thought, third place. I don't think anyone was expecting that 59 points. But also, it was just it's kind of weird. The first half of the season, the first 20 games, they were just playing lights out. They only lost 3 games, and out of their first 20, and then they lost 4 in the last 14, and we had that weird spot in the middle with Chicho getting injured, and then whatever the suspension was for, I don't know that anybody's ever leaked it or came out and said, was it something just he wrote, or was it something internal? Was it something with the players?
Something to do with Copa
And there was
America.
that lull, and then they
Someone-
kind of picked it up at the end.
I don't know, but someone did say to me just in the last couple weeks, someone who I always thought knew, but I mean, everybody at the club is like, I don't know. Oh, God. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, literally nobody knows. Yeah, suspend the guy who scored 73 goals in 21 games. Yeah, and don't explain to me why. It's fine.
It's fine.
They
We
don't let him
accept
come to the
it.
All-Star game either, right?
Someone I thought almost was going to say it, and then they were like, and Chicho, whatever he had going on, I was like, oh, so close. So close. It's going to spill. It's going to come out. It always does. It's just a matter of time. Yeah. So anyway, I think that there are multiple stories. I would say a big one, just because it's a new story for RSL, although it's a common story for other people, is the fact that they had 2 guys who played, one who they really counted on, Andres Gomez, who moved mid-season. And the fact they brought in so many new guys, that is part of the story of why, things were sluggish in the summer. Now, the fact is they were already slowing down before that happened, so you can't put it all on that.
No.
And I do think there's this element to the playoffs. They're still figuring out who they are, and some of the guys are figuring out where they fit. I think the transition's been most seamless for Marchuk. I don't think there's any question about that. He seems really good in his role, both defending and attacking. I got to think, I think it was the first goal they scored against Vancouver in the finale. He was a guy defending who won the ball.
Yeah,
And-
he won both of them.
He won them both. That's why I'm
he
confused,
did,
right?
yeah.
And so I think you see him doing things. And there are other things, we see flashes out of Lachlan, we see flashes out of Diogo. I think they're still figuring out where they fit in. And Pablo hasn't said this, but when I talk to him about it, I know what his answer is going to be. And it's going to be, they'll be better when they have a full training camp. Pablo is addicted to training camp. He loves training camp. He's a coach. He loves to practice and train. That's where you get into all the details, and he rubs his finger. This really is the Halloween edition. I got all this shadows.
It is kind of cool. The other pup-
Also where you tend to pick up a lot of injuries, too. It seems like, I haven't
You can.
done the stats, but it seems like RSL, maybe it's just we watch RSL all the time, they tend to get injured in practice. That seems to be the thing. Pablo, like you said, Pablo loves practice. They love hard practices. But
They do. They do.
we've
And
had some-
that'll happen. But he really does think that that's where the chemistry and all the repetitions happen. And for the new guys, it's critical. And there are multiple guys who've gotten off the slow starts over the years. And every time, it doesn't matter who it is, he always goes back to that guy was still rehabbing from off-season surgery and didn't participate fully in camp. That guy got dinged up in the first scrimmage, didn't participate fully in camp. He always goes back to it. He just thinks that is the bedrock. It's a mix. None of them are perfect. My wife's adjusting the lighting now, as you can tell. She didn't like the Halloween shadows, but now I got this top light, so I'm dark and the background's washed out. Yeah, whatever. Just so negotiate
Well,
this
great that she's
live during the
participating.
podcast.
Tell her thanks for being the lighting person.
She the key
She
grip or the key grip or the best boy?
Those
way,
are
as
all
long
your
as she gets a
titles. You're just
production
going to get
credit.
me in trouble. You're just going to stop, Brandt. All right. So I think the playoffs really, this is a chance The bad thing about the playoffs is there's breaks for the international, right? The international dates.
Right in
The
the
good
middle.
news is they don't play through the international dates, so we don't have shorthanded teams in the playoffs because that would be awful. But that's going to be more chances to train, and as guys settle in, playoff games are tight. Any one moment, guys building a rhythm and just combination play that leads to one goal can change everything. It can change everything. So I don't really know who this team is going to be deeper in the playoffs. They've got to survive to get deeper in the playoffs. But the fact, 3 games with Minnesota, and I think there's an international date after that. We'll have to check. Who knows how much better they'll be, how much they'll settle in another month. I think the playoffs are a real unknown in that regard.
Yep. And then they'll probably look at either Houston or Seattle after that, right?
Houston and Seattle are in the 4-5 series, so no. If RSL wins, they should get the 2-7 series.
All right, 2-7.
Which, unless there's a massive upset, means the LA Galaxy.
Colorado. Yeah, that was crazy how that played out at the end of the season. Did you see how that?
That was the last 20 minutes. The last 20 minutes, you're looking at the live standings. RSL's playing Colorado. Oh, wait, they gave up 2 goals and they fell behind. RSL's going to play Houston. Oh, wait, they gave up a goal. Now it's tied. They're playing. Oh, wait, there's another. Wait, RSL's come from behind. So the standings were just constantly changing because all the results were changing.
Yeah.
And eventually they settle on Minnesota, which, could have been Houston or Colorado pretty easily.
Yeah, and put LAFC top. Which is crazy because the Galaxy were quite a ways ahead towards the end and kind of limped down the season. The only team I think that limped along worse than RSL and LA was Colorado. After Bombito went away in mid-season, they haven't been a shell of themselves defensively.
Yes, and Colorado. And then I think that RSL did have a major lull, but they also finished unbeaten in their last 6. Now, and I think 12 points. Count them up if I'm wrong, but I think it's 12 points, 3 wins, 3 draws in their last 6.
Yep.
So 2 points per game. So it's trending up. I think they're getting a little more confidence. I think they're playing a little. I think that in the middle of the season, I think in August, they lose that Vancouver game. They didn't have the belief, and now they have the belief. And Pablo, if he could wish for anything, even over health of key players, he might go with belief. Like, hey, if you lose a key player or 2 in the attack, and the other team thinks it's going to be easy, but your guys have belief, that's how you slay a giant, right? They take you lightly. It'd be close between health. It'd be close between health and belief. I think he'd take belief. They're like 1 and 1A.
Yeah, team chemistry is incredibly important. I'm getting to be way too old. I've watched tons and tons of sports over since the 70s, and teams with chemistry are able to overcome teams with more talent time and time again. Talent wins a lot, but there is a lot to be said in chemistry.
Okay, Brandt, give me one game from every decade that illustrates that point. Ready, go.
Okay, well, there was the 77 World Series where the Yankees, the one where, this was talent over. I cried when Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs.
3 homers? Yeah, that was talent. I don't know that that's a great example.
Well, what about, in the 80s, Kirk Gibson.
Gibson. Excellent example. I was going to go with Villanova over Georgetown in the NCAA tournament, but the Dodgers over the A's is a great one. So there's 2 examples from the 80s. Okay, 90s, go.
Let's see. Let me think. It has to be the Jazz, right? Got to throw the Jazz in there. Somewhere.
Well, they didn't win the title, Brent. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not good with
but I'd go with Houston.
The bus like this.
How about Rudy Tomjanovich would never doubt the heart of a champion. Down 3-1, down 3-1. I mean, the other teams had the talent. The Jazz up 2-1. I mean, they had the talent to win the series, but Houston kept finding a way to get it done. So, all right, there's the 90s, 2000s. Go. Red Sox down 0-3. They come back and win in 7. Great. 2010. Give me another decade.
2009.
Oh, here's one. 2009 RSL. Right. There's another example.
Perfect.
LA had Beckham and Donovan. That's obvious, right?
The 2010s.
2010s. What do we got? Need a Cinderella. Oh, 2010s. What year was New England undefeated and lost to the 9-7 Giants?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was rough.
Right?
Was that the one where he caught the ball on his helmet?
Yeah, Tyree,
yeah,
but
Eli.
that might have been
Yeah.
that might have been the 2000s.
The
I'm
one
a little
before.
sneaky on that. Yeah,
Mm,
that's close. No, we're going to sign it the 2010s. I don't care.
we'll give it to him.
Well, the Patriots down 28-3 coming back. That was belief. Coming back
Yeah.
on the Falcons. That was.
Oh yeah.
There's another
That
one.
was
There's
tough.
examples all over the place. Yeah. How about Seattle winning an MLS Cup? Didn't they go to Toronto and win the MLS Cup without a shot on goal?
Yeah.
Just grind and grind and grind and get the thing to penalties and win.
Yeah, that was ugly.
It was,
worked.
but I don't think they care in Seattle.
No.
Well, we did that to Seattle one time too, right? Grind it out, grind it out.
In the playoffs on the way to the Western Conference Final.
Yep.
Yeah. And Seattle fans complained about it, forgetting you just did that a couple of years ago, guys. You thought it was pretty cool. That's sports fans for you, right?
Yeah.
Hey, let me remember this the way I want to remember it.
At least they weren't pulling
had,
a Rabiu Nito and having everybody stretchered off the field and then jumping up and being fine.
Didn't you have the
Robbie.
Minnesota Twins there in the 80s or 90s as well?
Excellent examples, yeah.
It takes me a while. I'm getting old. The synapses are just not
They're
firing.
not
like
fired.
they used
Yeah,
He's
they're
got
not
no
firing.
processor.
Yeah. There you go.
to. So, what about we talked about a lot of stuff, but what about players? Thoughts on the players through the season? Maybe some surprises, some disappointments. The defense seemed to come apart. The first of the year they were
Brilliant.
playing top, and then
Brilliant. They were right there at the top of the league. They were, for a while there, they were consistently 1, 2, or 3 in goals against, and then all of a sudden they are just leaking goals left and right.
Tyler's favorite stat is goal differential, and we were way up there.
I know, we were
Yeah.
so far ahead. I was like, we're going to win the cup. And then, you know,
Yeah, it's a marathon season. It's hard to keep that form. It's most important to play well at the end. And I think the League's Cup dynamic really changes the flow of the season. And we've seen that the last 2 years. And I think the other thing is that it's led to a really crowded schedule, and RSL has a deep roster. So I think RSL's really benefited 2 years in a row. That stretch of games, kind of May, June, July, sometimes April, but definitely May and June, where they're just playing twice a week, week after week after week, just constant Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. They are built for that. And they have been flying in that stretch of the schedule 2 years in a row. I think the League's Cup could lend itself to that, and they did all right in the League's Cup last year. But this year was a major disappointment and a long break, and really the team was out of sorts at that point and playing really poorly.
well,
I guess individual storylines, I think the big surprise has to be Emeka Nelly. He was a right back. He wasn't going to play there. It was going to be Pablo Ruiz, and it was going to be Brian Ojeda. And Pablo Ruiz goes down in a training session, as you like to point out, Brandt, in a training session. And Emeka steps right in, and he's played great. He's run down, I think, the minutes have kind of fried him over the course of the season. But I still think, big picture all told across the entire season, that's been a huge win for the club. Just a massive win. And then I think also you have to go Andres Gomez. When he came in, Pablo said, I think he'd be one of the top wingers in the league. Pablo, just hyping a sign. He's like, I think he can be one of the top wingers in the league. And then later in the year when he wasn't, he's like, he looks it in training on Tuesday and on Wednesday. He looks like one of the top, but it doesn't translate to Saturday. But he's a young player. He's adjusting, to the flying and to the, a foreign language and food culture, everything. He's a young kid. And then he had a full training camp. Pablo said he had a full training camp. He's really going to be good. 13 goals, 9 assists, and they get an unbelievable offer for him mid-season.
Right.
I get why they took it. It's so much money. It's just an unbelievable pile of money. And it changes the way players all around the world look at him. Players are dialed into this. I've talked to Lachlan Brook about it. Why did you want to come from Australia to the United States, changing hemispheres, moving literally half a world away? And one of his quick reasons was he's like, well, I know they moved Fidel Barajas, and I know they moved Andres Gomez. He said, I want to play in Europe. I'm not good enough to do that right now. I don't have that stature. I need to go to a place like Real Salt Lake. I need to get better. I need to play well, and we need to win. And if all those things happen, then I got a chance to go to Europe because I've already seen him do it with Gomez. So in the short run, the loss of his talent is a huge loss. But in the long run, it's a huge positive. Now, I will tell you, and nobody wants to say this on camera, but I have been told off camera, privately, it was the perfect time to move Andres Gomez. He was a little bit like the dog that caught the rabbit in the dog racing, and then they don't want to run because they realize it's a wooden rabbit. That he wanted to go to Europe, and he pushed himself so he could go to Europe. And even if they hadn't taken the offer, he knew all the offers were there. Even if the deal doesn't click, you can't hide the facts from he and his agent. And
Right.
at that point, even if he plays hard, is he going to have that 110%, that complete commitment, that jet fuel? I have to get there. I have to get there. Now he knows he's going there. He may not know when and where, but he knows he's going. He knows all the clubs that are interested. He knows the clubs that have called his agent. He knows. And so it's just, he doesn't have the same motivation anymore. And so it's time. And you can talk to some of the people who've been in soccer a long time inside the club, and they will tell you it was time. That he did not have the jet fuel in August that he had in April. He was at a different point in his career, and that's just the way soccer works. And I think everybody inside the club has been around the sport a long time and has seen the business of the sport for a long time, thought that was true. That it was really just his time to go, even though it was rough for the club.
Yeah, and with him, we talked about it a lot because we liked him and we didn't, and we liked him and we didn't. But when this club was playing well, there was a lot of going back to team chemistry, but there wasn't a lot of selfishness. They were very unselfish. When this team, this club was unselfish, they were scoring goals left and right, and you kind of saw it when Andres Gomez, the rumors came out. He looked like he was. This was mentioned by a lot of people. Looks like he's playing to go somewhere and not playing for the team. So you could kind of see the chemistry was a little different after the injury to Chicho and people trying to step up maybe and fill that hole. But you could sense, and I have to absolutely agree, it was probably a good time for him to go, and I wasn't too disappointed. I thought the benefit for the club was totally worth letting him go.
I think a guy who's a really interesting story, and Pablo, both on and off camera, has been very definitive on this, is Crooks. And Pablo will tell you that Andres Gomez owes Crooks. I don't know if he'll send him any checks. I doubt it. But he owes it. And he said one thing that Andres got very good at, the combination playing going down the line. So, well, for a long time, he couldn't get Andres in a game to commit to that. He'd see it in training. But in training, they do a lot of stuff that's 60 and 70 yard work instead of full field work. And you don't have as far to recover. In a game, guys don't want to get labeled that guy who doesn't defend. And so whether it's Catranas or Gomez, anybody who has to go up and down the line, right? It's like, if I commit forward to make this run and you don't give me the ball back, I've just run 30 yards at top speed. Now I got to turn around and I got to fly 30 yards unless we've lost the ball. Then I got to run 50 or 70 or 90 yards. You're killing me here. And Pablo said that Crooks was very good on the ball, taking a touch, taking the extra touch, even giving him a nod of the head like, dude, I can hold this guy off for a little while, but you needed to go a couple minutes ago. And he said eventually, and then he would get him the ball, and he'd get him the ball. It'd be the right pass into the right space and perfectly weighted. So that Gomez not only got the ball, he got the ball in a position where he could be dangerous and do some damage. And as they built that chemistry and Gomez built that trust, he became quicker to make that run, which just made him more devastating. And Pablo said Crooks doesn't get nearly enough credit for how much he helped Andres. That he would come over and hold up the ball, and he's so good on the ball. Maybe not Javier Morales good, but he's in that ballpark. Guys who they get the ball and they get it in a tight space and they know how to play every angle and maximize the space and maximize the time they get on the ball to give their teammates time to eventually do the right thing.
Yeah, DJ.
Gomez is fly down the line and use his speed.
Yeah, no, you are singing right to Brandt's heart right now. His heart is 2 sizes big. He is
well,
the
now we're going
Grinch
into
right
Grinch
now.
mode. We're doing a Halloween show, and you're going Christmas on me here, Tyler. Come on now, Tyler.
Yeah, I might be a big Crooks fan. And I think it's interesting. He's one of those players that maybe after a full preseason, right, he's going to be a lot better player next year. And I wonder, we've talked a lot about Matt Crooks and kind of does the team need to transition and play to Crooks' strength and he adjusts to them, because it's almost like a different way to play where MLS is so direct, so forward, and it looks like Matt passes the ball to a teammate, in hopes that they'll pass it right back to him to open up some space and do a little more back and forth, and then he passes it to somebody and they just off they go with it somewhere else.
Pablo will very, 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 very rarely tell his team not to play direct. He loves playing direct, and I think it goes back to because he hated defending it as a player. And the thing I've told him is like, Pablo, I am not the brightest guy in the room, and you know way more soccer than me. But for our Thursday show with Dunny talking Real on Channel 2, nice plug. Thank you.
That was good. That was good. Smooth.
I put together the goals of the week. And one of the things I do, like some leagues, you can go like MLS and USL online or on YouTube or both. They'll do the goals of the week. So you can find the top 4 or 5 goals like that. For reasons that aren't clear to me, although they can make money off it, and if the EPL is good at anything, it's making money. But they don't have that goals of the week feature. They post every goal in the league, like 15 minutes or so. So I watch that on YouTube, and I'll watch the goal live, and then if it isn't good enough, if you hit the I think it's the L key twice. I just do it. I don't even know what it is. I think you hit the L key twice, and it'll jump ahead 10 and then 20 seconds. And that gets me through the replays to the next goal, so I can watch 15 minutes in like 6 or 7. And if I want to watch the replays to see how good they are, I can. And so I see every EPL goal, and I'm like, Pablo, I'm serious. Most weeks, 60 to 70% of the EPL goals are in transition. And if it's like only 60, that's probably because like 20 or 25% of them are set pieces. It's really hard to break down the defense. So play in transition. It's like week after week, the number of times in the EPL they score when they're running at the goal and they get the defenders to turn and face their goal. That's really the easiest way to score in most leagues. And I check the EPL every week, and it's just amazing how consistent that is. So Pablo will tell him play direct, but I do think the thing that we may see from Crooks in the playoffs is that after Crooks gives up the ball, he tends to be defensive minded, which Pablo loves because not every attacker is. But I think Pablo's like, Matt, you got to get forward and get inside the 16 or get inside the 18, get inside the penalty box, and maybe even get to the top of the 6. People don't expect that late arriving run from you. It's deadly. We all saw Damir Kreilach score off it 1,000,000 times, and Matt needs to make that run. He gets the ball. He's 25, 30 yards out. He makes a great pass. Go, because they're leaving you to go defend the ball or the space, and if you go, you're going to be unmarked, but you got to get in there and score goals. And Pablo's really been pushing him, and at a training session last week, afterwards I was watching it, and I usually go on Tuesdays, and I said, hey, Pablo, is it just me, or was Crooks really sharp in front of goal? And Pablo was like, and he's just like, he didn't even want to say anything loud and like alter the universe. He likes the way it's trending. So if Crooks scores with some late arriving run between the 6 and the penalty spot, you heard it here first.
We'll give you all the credit, David.
Well, you probably ought to give it to Crooks because he'll be the one doing the work, but I'll take it. I don't mind. Yeah.
So what about some other players? I mean, I love Matt Crooks. I could talk Matt Crooks all days. I picked him to be the team MVP. But I think over the season, I think the MVP for me is Brian Ojeda. I think that guy has been a rock in the middle with Anelli, but it's been Brian Ojeda. He has been the stalwart in there.
Yeah, and I do think when they had that lull, he had a lull, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's minutes. I don't know if he was playing through some kind of injury they don't want to talk about. I don't know if it's just one of those things and the dog days got to him. I do think he's still young. I do think he's still evolving as a player, and you couldn't help but notice in that last game, back to Pablo and wanting to play direct. Pablo Mastroni, I mean, you always hate when injuries happen because players work so hard. They don't get to play for that long. There's way more training sessions than games. And when you miss them, it sucks. But what the team missed, in addition to player, when Pablo Ruiz went down, is they missed those 50-yard balls. When the defense gets overcommitted to one part of the field, Pablo switches the point of attack and springs whoever down whichever sideline is overloaded. He goes to the other one, and so whether it's Gomez or Catranas or whoever, Chicho over the top, they missed that. And Palacio struggled and then started playing better. And then Pablo said everyone plays the position differently, and what Emeka brings is the ability to win so many second balls, and he's rarely caught out of position. But he says what Nelson brings is the ability, he can't play the 60-yard ball the way Pablo Ruiz does, but he does play a lot of 45-yard balls, and it's very useful, and it's something no one else on the team does until recently. Brian Ojeda started playing them, and both goals came off Ojeda finding Diego Luna with a 45, 50-yard ball.
Exactly.
And so, once again, Pablo's really committed to the game model. He likes it. I mean, I think the coaching change was really hard because he lost friends. He was literally friends with the guys, so it's hard to have it happen. But I think what he likes about the new game model is it's like, it's a backbone. It's something the team can hold on to. This is how we play. And when they get into these situations where they're playing 20 to 25 guys through the busy part of the season, when the schedule's really congested, they play the same way, even if they're not playing with guys they're familiar with. And it's giving them something to rely on. But Pablo is still like, hey, some of these teams, the only way they could stop RSL from playing through the middle of the park was to overload it with numbers. And at that point, Pablo's like, okay, forget the game model. It's 3v5, it's 5v7, it's getting congested. It's time to switch the point of attack big time. And so the guys who've been able to do that have really made a difference and created opportunities for their teammates, whether it shows up in the stat sheet or not. If there are 3 passes after that, you don't get an assist, but you still made it happen.
Exactly. No, and that I think that helped change the dynamic of the game when Anelli went out right. I didn't see that coming. I didn't see Brown coming in and playing center back, but apparently Marcelo's not match fit for more than, say, 60 minutes, right?
Right.
And
right.
Where's Bodie at? Is he still out injured?
I've seen him start to get back into it, and I wonder how much fitness he lost. And I just wonder how well he's been able to train every day. So I don't know. I'm with you. I was surprised. I didn't know what would happen when Philip went down.
Yeah. Well, Marcelo's the only center back on the bench, and I was sitting there going, "Oh boy, that is not."
Well, I knew Marcelo. I know they're worried about Marcelo's conditioning. It has been so long since he played, and I think one thing the club's got to look at, and it's easy to spend other people's money, and I'm really good at it. But if I were spending other people's money, they need to put grass into Zions Bank Stadium, because to put veterans out there who've had hip, knee, or ankle injuries and put them on turf, it's not great. And they'd really like to get guys games with the Monarchs. And so bringing guys back and getting them game time and match fitness, it's a really difficult thing to do.
Yep, sure
Go
is.
ahead, Dan.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that I really like about this team is the fact that they're very young. I mean, Quentin made us even younger at 24. Ojeda's 24. I mean, Caliscan and Bertine and Brooke are all 23. Palacios 23. Bodie's 22. Matt Bell's 22. Gomez was 22. I mean, he's still 22, but he's gone.
Chang is 39.
Luna's 21. I'm 49. Gavin Beavers is 19 still. Gozo's 17. We got a lot of up-and-coming players to mix in with our veteran talent.
Crooks, Chicho, and now Diogo, I think, are the 3, and Justin Glad, are 4 guys who are in their prime. I think everybody else, maybe Brody when he's in, would be 5. But most of the other guys are young, and you can say have not reached their peak yet. There's a lot of upside. Am I forgetting anybody? I think those are the core guys.
Yep.
That we've seen get most of the starts. I mean, Chang's coming off the bench. He's obviously at the end of his career playing in that 10-minute role. You got to lead. He'll possess the ball. He won't get caught out of position.
Yeah. And our former friend, Costa Rican Brian Oviedo, the other Brian.
Yeah, he's gone
down
now.
a couple Bryans.
Yeah.
We need a few more Bryans.
I know. We lost to Brian.
Only if they spell their name
sad.
differently. You can have multiple Bryans, but none of them are allowed to spell their name the same way. That's the important thing.
Then my other question, DJ, is I want a goalkeeper. I want McMath at his prime. I want Beavers to be better. We need one of those two to just, hold down the fort or something. I don't know. We're struggling.
I was talking away from cameras, not to be quoted, because of the situation is in. But I said, well, the way these two guys are playing, and there's time to rewrite this, right? Because there's still games left. At this point, there's probably still, I bet there were 3 or 4 regular season games left when I said this. And he said the way these 2 goalkeepers are struggling down the stretch, they're really making it pretty easy to make the offseason decision to bring someone in. To which I was told, oh, you'd be surprised. So I don't think they'll run it back with the same 2 guys, but maybe they will. Now, I'll also say McMath just, has had a couple of strong performances here. The team's giving up 1 goal in 3 games. I mean, you can't have any arguments, and it's not just the goalkeeper; it's what's going on in front of the goalkeeper. Right. But if they were to have a strong postseason run with those type of numbers, maybe they do run it back. It could go a lot of ways in the offseason. Even if they make a change, I don't know what it would be. I do know there's been interest in Beavers. I would be surprised with Beavers' performances if the money got big enough to tempt them, but they absolutely did not see the Fidel Barajas number coming. They knew there was interest, but they just thought not yet. I think in their grand plan, Andres Gomez was going to move in the winter, and Barajas was going to step into the starting lineup next year and might only be in the starting lineup 1 year. Both of those moves got moved up big time because of the market, because what other teams wanted to do and the checks they were willing to write. So I don't think Gavin Beavers is going to get a big offer in the offseason, but off what I saw with Fidel Barajas and Andres Gomez, I won't rule it out. There's so many clubs, you never know what they're thinking.
Well,
and
Barajas had a better season than Beavers. I mean, Beavers had the opportunities. That's got to be frustrating as a player. You have to be a professional with McMath. He does well, and then the pressure, I think, builds because they keep giving Beavers games. You have to commit. And if they're going to give a guy like Beavers the starting job, give him the starting job and let him win it or lose it.
Yeah, let him give up 9 goals in 3 games,
You say that, but this is where the club's motto, and I can't do it word for word, but the club's motto is basically win while developing players. Well, sometimes you have to choose, If Beavers is in a tough stretch and he's given up 9 goals in 3 games, what are the odds you're going to win?
Exactly.
Not good. And he's just 19. You'd be crazy to give up on him. We've seen too many good things from him, and there's so much, untapped, unrealized potential there. It just looks like, 3 years from now, he's going to be a much better goalkeeper. 2 years from now, he's going to be a much better goalkeeper. But they want to go to the playoffs right now. They want to be top 4 this year. They wanted to be top 4 last year. I asked somebody once, would Elliot Fall still be the GM if Seattle or Houston had lost on decision day a year ago and RSL slid into the top 4? And all I was told is, that's a very good question. But it didn't happen, and he's not here, right? So to everybody else in the organization, that could happen to us. Why don't we get top 4? I don't care if assistant coach or a head coach, an assistant GM, the GM, the team president, why don't we get top 4 and not figure it out? That's a tough, it's their goal, and it's what they want to do, and it's what they've signed on for, but winning while developing players is not an easy ask.
No, and you have to be committed. Chicago's done, I think, twice with goalkeepers. There's been a couple of MLS clubs that stuck with a young goalkeeper, and it paid off big time for them. But we watched
look at Minnesota. Season. Look at Minnesota. We're going to see Dane St. Clair again. Yeah, there's a young goalkeeper and a good goalkeeper, and he was out there. He was out there as a young kid. He's still young. He's not a kid anymore, but he's still the young side.
We decided that if you have 2 half-decent goalkeepers, you don't have 1. You got 0, pretty much.
Yep.
You got
I don't think you're going to find anybody in the organization who wants to go on record with that, but I bet I could find some people who aren't going to argue with you. So, and having said that, I think we also have to acknowledge that how well the 10 guys in front of the goalkeeper have played at times has been an open question, right? Now, maybe some of that's on the goalkeeper and how well they communicate and help the guys immediately in front of them. But nonetheless, the level of defending, I think going back to the Andres Gomez point, there was at one point where he was referred to as one of the best defenders on the team. And then there was a point where nobody would say that aloud anymore. They didn't want to call him out, but they weren't praising him either. And I think that why it spoke volumes.
So talking about change, what about and the defensive struggles? What about the center backs, Justin Glad and Brian Vera. I mean, could we see changes in the offseason? Does Justin Glad need to find greener pastures? Is Brian Vera going to come back, or is he kind of expectorated himself out of the team?
Oh, I see what you did there.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. Wow. Just spit it out, big guy. Way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yikes. Ugh.
I think a lot of that is TBD. I wouldn't rule out either guy moving on for multiple reasons, either their own choice or the club's. But depending on how they perform down the stretch, I could see them both being back. Winning is the great deodorant. And if they go out in the postseason because they lose a couple of 4-3 games in the series to Minnesota, then the odds of change go way, way up. And we can all say that, what have you done for me lately? That's something fans say. Come on, let's be honest. I think we've seen it with teams, right? We've seen, Andy Reid in Philadelphia. He's got the local tie to BYU, so a lot of people follow this story, right? The Eagles are in the NFC title game every year, and eventually it's like, well, we just can't get over the hump with him. We're going to let him go. So teams literally send the plane to the airport, and he decides to get on the Chiefs plane, and he flies to Kansas City, gets the job, and he's working on trying to win a third straight Super Bowl because he got a better quarterback. And teams give up on players, they give up on coaches, they give up on GMs all the time. What have you done for me lately? Did the Utes just change an offensive coordinator? Is it the offensive coordinator who went to the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl and the Rose Bowl?
Same
He's
guy.
been here 5.5 years in his second stint. They've been in the conference title game 3 times, and the other 3 years Cam Rising had a season-ending injury. Are we really thinking this is all about the offensive coordinator?
Clearly it's not.
Well, what have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
So now I know I was told today that this was Andy's decision. It was all Andy's decision. So.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay, Andy.
Take that for what it's worth. Take that however you want.
I'm sick of this. These guys suck. I'm out of here.
I don't know.
We've kind of talked about that a lot on episodes of how long do you stay with a player. I kind of really appreciated the Bill Belichick approach in New England. Their focus was on winning and constantly finding the better players. And if you could stick around, you did, and kind of taking the emotion out of it. But fans, they love their players. They want to keep their players around. And we've seen time and time again, maybe even with the Jazz, where they stuck with players too long because people love them and they missed their opportunity to really create a title-winning team.
Pablo Mastroni is big on, and this is not in relation to any one player, this is just really a philosophy he believes, is that you have to help every player be the best player they can. That's what you do every training session, and that's what you do in all your one-on-one meetings. But then when it's time to make decisions for the club, whether it's starting 11, putting people in the 20, subbing guys on or off, changing the roster, trades, acquisitions, moving guys, selling guys, what is best for the club? And he says the second you let any emotion, compassion, any of that into it, it's got to be what you say about New England. It's got to be clear-eyed, analytical, what is best for the club. And it's always going to be about the group and the collective. And I do think from an individual perspective, and this is a little Jurgen Klinsmann-ish, is that guys have to be challenged. And Jurgen was big on everyone's got to play in Europe. Well, that's because he's from Europe, right? Guys can be challenged going to Mexico, right? And we've seen that with multiple MLS players. Cade Cowell in San Jose, right? Great move. We've seen multiple RSL players get there. And so Fidel Barajas most recently, but it's a much longer list than that. Saucedo, right? Didn't he go? He went to Mexico, right?
Brandt's favorite player, fake left, go right. Saucedo for the shot. That was his one move. And if it worked, it
go
worked.
left, go right.
They got it.
Yeah, bend it around the keeper and hit that side panel, right? That was Bofo's go-to, right?
At least 2 or 3 times a season. But that's all he did.
Got it. And so Pablo is big on that players need the challenge, and that's where the growth comes from. Now, you can get that as your role changes inside a club. And, I think the last thing for Justin Glad is almost becoming the captain, and more of a leader. I think that Pablo actually would say that the Aaron Herrera move was something that gave Justin a chance to grow, because now instead of playing with guys where he came up from the academy and he was an equal, he was playing with younger, less experienced guys, and he really could be a vocal, and he could be more demanding without someone looking at him like, when did you become the boss of me? We were 15 years old eating Casa Grande together, So it changed. Changes within the club can put a player in a different position. And Glad isn't all.
Herrera was on $800,000, so.
See, there you go. And they had like 3 or 4 capable right backs on the team, right? So there was a lot that went into that move for sure.
And 3 of them couldn't carry Aaron's lunchbox at the moment, probably.
Yeah.
Together. Oh, that's probably too mean. But going back to chemistry and talking about team chemistry, because it takes me a while. What about the World Cup with Kyle Beckerman? Is that 2010? That the MLS
2014 in Brazil. 2014 in Brazil.
Yeah.
When Klinsmann didn't
Took
start
them out against Belgium. Yeah.
Did not start Kyle Beckerman at that last game, and it cost them. But that's a team that was chemistry, and I think you're right. I would love to see more MLS players on the national team because they have more to play for. Right? They're not sitting the bench cashing big checks overseas. They're still fighting.
I actually spoke to Pablo about this right before or right after Berhalter was out. It was right as it was all going down. And he said, and it was funny because he echoed something I heard Pat Riley say 30 years earlier. And he said, I was asking him about that. He said, well, I mean, it's easy to blame the coach. He goes, and I'm a coach, so, I'm going to defend the coach. He said, but yes, they got all these guys who play in Europe. He said, but you got a lot of guys who are coming off the bench. And you got a lot of guys who have smaller roles. They don't have the pressure of winning and making the big play in the biggest moment under the most pressure. They haven't done that. They're not captains. They're, with the exception of Christian Pulisic, they are not the leading goal scorer. They are not the leading creator. They are role guys. And now they go to the national team and the weight's on their shoulders, right? They're not the complimentary guy. They're the guy. And he says they may be very good at handling that one day, but they're not very good at handling it today. Right? And I said, that reminds me of something Pat Riley said 30 years ago. Riley was asked about the Lakers, and it was late in Magic Johnson era. And he said, 1/3 of the roster needs to be young guys because that's how you get better. Their improvement lifts the whole squad. 1/3 needs to be in the prime. They carry the team night in and night out, game in and game out. But 1/3 needs to be veterans. And when there's a rocky moment, the veteran has to stand up in the locker room and say what the coach would say because it sounds different coming from a player. And the veteran has to hit the big shot. And the veteran has to make the pressure free throws. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when he wasn't 1/3 of what he'd been in his prime, stepped up at the end of a game 6. I will never forget it. And there's like 3, 4, 5 seconds left. They're trailing the Pistons by a point. If he misses 2 free throws, the Pistons are going to win the world championship. They're up 3-2. He makes the time free throw. He makes the go-ahead free throw. They force a Game 7. Lakers win a Game 7 and go back-to-back. And it's like, if they'd sent a rookie up there, it wouldn't have worked. But they sent Kareem up there, and he made it happen. And Pablo's like, that's it. He says, I totally believe the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 mantra. Totally believe it.
Yeah, Brian Ojeda, we were sad to see Brian Ojeda go because he brought a lot of that look like to the club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with the national team, it speaks to like making the whole squad Reina. You know what I mean? Where he's this flash in the pan, flashy player, comes on in spot duty. It's the perfect role for him there. But then he comes to the national team and he's supposed to take over the game and run it and engineer it. And that's why we need Tyler Adams, my boy.
Yeah,
my boy. We have the same name. So, of course, I played just like he would. Yeah. No, he's a way better player than I ever would be. I'm way too big. But he commands their respect, and he holds everybody accountable on the team. And with him being out, I thought that spelled the end for Berhalter. As soon as he was on he was not healthy, I was like, Berhalter's going to get canned before he gets healthy.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to 2014 and Beckerman's role. Look at that point. He's the captain. He's won an MLS Cup. He's been in the Champions League. He's played in the Champions League final against Monterrey. Well, in one of the 2 legs. And sore point, I know. But he's just been in a lot of those matches. And at that point, he had a lot of caps for the U.S. team, too. I mean, he'd been playing in the Gold Cup as early as 2009. So he'd been playing internationally for 5 years. So what he brought is kind of that metronome in the middle, the guy who always switched the point of attack, relieved pressure, gave everybody a chance to take a deep breath. Nobody has to defend. We still have the ball. And that repeated over and over and over and over the course of a match gives a lot of guys a chance to be who they are at their best and take a lot of the pressure off, But you need a veteran to do that. Could Kyle have done that in the 2006 World Cup? He's in a different point in his career then, and he doesn't have all those experiences to draw on.
Well, and he had Michael Bradley too, and the two of them together, just the hair and the no hair. It was like the perfect combination, right?
That's the odd couple, right? Okay.
There's a
You say,
couple
that
of,
as, you say that as a guy with no hair and all the love in the world,
Right, exactly.
right?
yeah. There's a couple other players too. Well, we haven't talked about Diego Luna, Chicho Arango. Thoughts on Diego? Kind of struggled, but he's had a great season. He's had a
been
few low
clutch
spots,
down
but
the
he seems to
stretch.
be turning it on right now.
Yeah.
And how long does Diego stay? And
Excellent question. When does the offer come? And so it's not just about RSL. It's about, other clubs and their needs and what they're looking for and how they want to spend their money. And there's so many clubs in the world, I can't even begin to tell you. I don't have any idea. Who knows who's going to.
Well, and he doesn't fit a specific mold either, right? He's kind of like that Diego Maradona type, where he's low and he's strong and he's sturdy.
Well,
right?
at least you didn't, pick one of the all timers. So there, thanks for not setting the bar too high. We just go straight to Maradona.
Well, I'm just saying he's not your typical winger.
I mean, I'll give you credit for dropping the standard a little bit. That was nice.
He's not your typical winger, He's not your Andres Gomez, get down the wing, spraying the balls, sometimes go to goal, right? He's more of that cut inside, tough on the ball, scrappy.
Yeah.
So it's
he did
maybe
score
a
a
different
goal, just like the one that one of the goals that Messi scored this weekend.
Pablo Mastroianni said because I've talked to him about this multiple times, and he's really spelled out Diego Luna. He says and this isn't a Diego Luna thing specifically, although it fits to him. It's more about players who are prodigies at a young age. Is that what they do because it's what's best for their team, and I've seen this in basketball also. This is just about the free-flowing team sports, and it's very much in the U.S. youth system. The academies are hopefully helping this, but when it's about your club winning, and when it's not about player development, when it's about winning, well, you get the ball to your best player and you let him take over a game, and everything's built around them. And so when you're the caliber of Diego Luna, when you were 10 years old, when you were 12 years old, when you were 14 years old, you're just always the guy. So you go get the ball. And Pablo's point is, well, there comes a time where you no longer have this massive talent advantage. And furthermore, there comes a time as you move into the pros where you go against guys and all of a sudden you're playing against grown men who have 10 years of experience you don't have. And you're going to go get the ball 70 yards from goal and you're going to be dangerous. Hey, you're not running through these 14-year-olds anymore. This is a different deal. So how do you fit into a system? And one thing that's really helped Diego is they had a conversation, and I don't know at what point they had it or how many times they've had it. But what really helped Diego Luna, and Pablo said it led to a jump in his play pretty quickly, was Diego Luna really absorbed a conversation where he said, hey, you want to go play in Europe? Yes. You want to go play for a great club? Yes. You want to play? They're not going to build around you. You have to come fit into their system. So you can't just stop everything and go get the ball. You have to learn, like, this is where I'm in the field. This is how I'm dangerous. This is the spaces that are available to me. This is where I can make runs. And they're going to pay a lot of money for you. You're going to expect to get goals and assists. You think you're going to get them playing 70 yards away? You've got to be in the final third. You got to be inside the 18. You have to be inside the penalty spot. You have to be inside the 6. And that doesn't come naturally to Diego, but I think what we're seeing is more and more of that. I think we're seeing
that's how the
more and
goals
more of
came.
that.
That's how they came against Vancouver, right? Very recently. Both of them came that way. Knocked the ball
Yes.
up the wing when he was out in good space.
Right. But don't go get the ball from Ojeda because now you're in all the congestion. Stay on the other side of the field. Trust that your teammate is going to see you and hit the big switch. But if you turn and run back to him, you kill everything. everything. And now Diego trusts that more, and we're seeing the results. The other thing, and Pablo just told me this a couple of weeks ago. He said, with Andres gone, and we were talking about the search for more goals. He says Diego Luna and Matt Crooks. Brandt, wake up! I said Matt Crooks. I said,
Yay!
wake up, Brandt. He's your guy. He said the great thing about them is they're creators. He said that's a great thing. He says the great thing about them is they're unselfish. But we just lost 13 goals and 9 assists, and Chicho hasn't found his form yet. So those two guys have got to be selfish, and they got to go score goals. And again, that means get inside the 18, get inside the 12, get inside the 6, make yourself dangerous, and don't be afraid to pull the trigger. Trust your talent. Diego could have waited, and he could have laid the ball off on that first goal. Trust your talent, pull the trigger. And if you look, there's a replay from behind the goal, and the camera is on the west side of the goal, right? He scored in the south end on the west side. And you can see him cut back, and you can literally see as the camera shoots through the goal, what part of the goal the defender took away and what part of the goal the goalkeeper took away. And you can see what's left for Diego to shoot at. And it's like maybe 2 widths of the ball from the post into the right. He not only has to hit the side panel, he's got to hit either the post or the front of the side panel, or that's blocked, or even if he bends it around that guy, the keeper's going to push it wide.
Yep.
But he trusted his talent, and he hit that small target.
No, it was fun. I was standing in the north end or south end, sorry, with my twins, and we were sitting right at that angle, and the ball came right at us. It was perfect. We were like, "Oh my gosh, that was perfect!" It was like inch perfect. Yeah, it was. Great.
It was inch perfect, right?
Yep.
And you got to trust yourself that you can score. You can hit that small a target and score in the last 15 minutes of a game when you're behind, and you got to have a goal. And you can't. If you hesitate, the moment's gone.
Yep.
And he did, and he pulled the trigger. And he didn't go running back to get the ball. He trusted Brian Ojeda to play him that 50-yard ball on the diagonal, right? So all those things add up. You know, how does Luna, wow, how has this happened? And Pablo's point is, it's 1,000 training sessions. It's breaking habits that Luna's built up over 10,000 training sessions and games, because of course he played that way when he was 10 and when he was 12 and when he was 14. And this is just what young players have they've got to have this trust, but they're playing with better teammates now. Of course they don't have that trust. When they were younger, they weren't playing with teammates of that quality, right? That's what I was saying earlier about Andres Gomez. He wasn't playing with a Matt Crooks who could stay on the ball in a tight space, hold off a defender, and nod and like, go, I'm going to give you the ball, but not until you run. It's soccer. You have to run, right?
Yeah,
that simple phrase solves so many problems. Gomez runs, Crooks gives him the ball, and the trust gets built.
Excellent points. As always, David. What about Chicho or Rongo? Looks like he hasn't found his form. He doesn't look like he's happy at the moment. He's been subbed off early and kind of been frustrated as he's come off the pitch. What is he sticking around, or we have to worry? What are your thoughts on Chicho?
Well, number one, to address that point about sticking around, I don't worry about that. If people don't want to be somewhere, they're not going to be effective. Period. So if he wants to go, let him go and trust that the club will identify somebody else and bring somebody else in, and they'll go on. Having said that, I haven't heard any of that. What I've heard the last couple of weeks is that he's more involved than ever. He's been talked to repeatedly about conditioning and about effort and about intensity, and I think he's been shown clips by the staff about, look, when you defend, look at how you score goals. Here's a game. Look at how you're defending. Here's the same game. Look at these goals. There's this correlation, and it doesn't automatically make sense to players, but I think there's so many parallels in all these. I have to cover so many sports, and I hear so many coaches talk, and there's so many press conferences, and it doesn't matter if it's hockey, it doesn't matter if it's basketball, it doesn't matter if it's soccer. I don't know anything about lacrosse, but I would bet you lacrosse goes right in that category. And I had a basketball coach say once, if you can't hit a shot, go defend like crazy. Lose yourself in the game. Lose yourself in every detail. Give 110%. Stop thinking about shooting. Yeah. And he says, when you look up, you'll be putting the ball in the bucket. It'll just happen. And I told that to Pablo once, and he was like, absolutely. That's absolutely what every attacker needs to think. And he says, and it's foreign to every attacker. And I think it goes back to why U.S. soccer can take a big jump forward as these academies get better. And not just the MLS academies. We're starting to see USL teams, right? They're starting to invest in youth development. And Pablo's like, the better competition these guys get, one of the things that's been holding U.S. soccer back is that the best players have been playing inferior competition. And for multiple reasons, that leads not necessarily to bad habits. It just leads to habits that aren't productive when you get into a game where everybody's at a higher level. You know, you don't trust your teammates the same way. You haven't been defended and challenged the same way. There's lessons that have to be learned. And that's why Klinsmann was always saying, go to Europe, go to Europe, go to Europe. And it doesn't mean every situation in Europe is great. And as we talked about, there is that problem where you can get buried. And, you know, if you're at too big a club in Europe, you don't have the responsibility on your shoulders. And maybe you're better off being at a second division side somewhere.
The USL has made some great transfers, and they are starting to create relationships with clubs overseas. Jeremy Kelly came from, I can't remember, but he's playing for my other club, Crawley Town, in League One, and he's just had a huge impact. He's one of the few Americans that they have over there, and I've always thought that I would love to see RSL maybe loan out a player to one of these League One, League Two, even not even championship sides, and let them go over there and play some football. Because I think it'd be interesting to see how that would work out. Jeremy Kelly, like I said, has just been not a godsend, but it's been quite the surprise for the English fans to see an American come over and really play well for their club.
Well, I don't know how. I don't know why it works, but they've been sending players to that small club, I think third division in Austria, and it's paid off multiple times, right? And it really paid off for Pablo Ruiz, but it also paid off for Andrew Brody. So there is something. What?
Pittscow or whatever it is.
Yes, it's Pittscow. And the fact that I could not remember that will disappoint Trey Fitzgerald greatly, and I will be castigated. How could you forget?
I'll just let all three of us, between the three of us, we got it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen pictures of that place, holy cow. It's like, you think like RSL has one of the best backdrops, and they do, right? I mean, it's so scenic. Man, that place is right there, side by side. It is gorgeous. It's unbelievable. But also, I think the coaching they get there and the fact that guys have to step up and be leaders, you know? And it really, Andrew Brody said it forced him to grow up. You know, it forced him to grow up, it forced him to look at his soccer career differently, and, huge payoff.
And I've heard a lot of, they compare some comparisons between American youth approach to the game, where it's, let's get you playing a ton of games and then practice. But on the European side, let's practice, then play a game. So the focus is a little more on development than playing games, which comes into the pay for play, and everybody's on these tournaments and all of that stuff we don't want to get into.
Right. Well, just to finish up on Chicho, because I got derailed there. But one thing is that Chicho seems to have taken a lot of this talk about defending to heart, and he has been checking his numbers with the staff at the end of training sessions. And they've taken that as a really good sign about him trying to dedicate himself, like, okay, I think I went pretty hard today. Did I really go that hard? How much ground did I cover? You know, because they've got all the stats on how many sprints, how many times did you hit a top speed, you know, how much ground did you cover over the whole training session in relation to everybody else, or at least the guys who, you know, play a similar position. And he's been really into that. So they say he's buying into it. So I don't worry so much about the attitude or not wanting to be there, or, you know, clearly there were issues. Clearly there was whatever was going on. And it takes a while to dig out of that hole. But at some point, you know, talent finds its level, right? So this doesn't go on forever. At some point, he finds the back of the net. And man, Jason Christ, if Jason Christ told me once, he told me 10,000 times, they come in bunches, and then they don't. And then they come in bunches. Now, this is really extreme with Chicho, and I think we can all agree he brought some of it on himself. But at the same time, some of it is just the nature of the sport, too. And so he's got to trust his talent, and he's got to keep going. Now, as far as the him getting subbed off, Pablo, I've asked Pablo about this multiple times. He's always like, DJ, I've already told you this. Like, I don't know, I need it now. I can't have this. I can't run a clip with the snow-capped mountains in August. Okay, so you're just gonna have to tell me again. He's like, the coach, the manager has got to do what's best for the group, and players want to play. Every player wants to play. Nobody wants to sub off. He's got great stories that he won't share about teammates who subbed off and behaved poorly, right? Every coach has had to put up with someone who didn't want to shake hands. Every coach has had to put up with someone who's gone to the locker room. As Pablo said, like, the best thing you say as a coach is, listen, I'm doing what's best for the group. I might even be doing what's best for you. And you don't have to like me for it, but we're not friends. I got friends. I don't have to be friends with you. And Pablo's like, if the coach doesn't have that speech in his pocket, he's probably not a very good coach. That's just one every coach has got to have. And so the weird thing about the schedule is they had these long breaks, but then they had 3 games in 8 days twice. And they're playing at elevation, and they're getting on planes and flying. And Pablo's like, you got 5 subs. Why would you think an attacker can go 270 minutes in 8 days at 100% efficiency? He said, I got Anderson Julio over on the bench. Who runs faster than that guy? At some point, we got to get his speed in the game against tired guys. And, it's just, I've heard a couple coaches say this too. This is another good line privately. Guys like, dude, like, Messi doesn't play 270 minutes in 8 days. Why do you? He's Messi. He's Messi. What are you? Why are you so special?
Right.
Be a teammate and get over there and cheer.
They probably tell Messi, I think you ran a little bit too much in this game.
I think, yeah, right. And Messi's like, no, don't worry, I walked a lot.
That was one of my favorite quotes. I think one of the younger players was telling them that Messi told him, you run around too much. You need to slow down, walk more, and watch the game.
Yeah, as long as you're Messi and you're surrounded by guys who do all the defending and all the dirty work, right? It's soccer, you have to run. It's a great saying, unless you're Leo Messi. It's soccer. You have to run when there's an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, right? That's when you have to run.
Severino didn't do that. Savo would just like to stay in the middle of the field, and that's kind of why some fans kind of got on him. They were like, hey, you're not running out balls in the corners. Yeah. And he's like, that's not my job. My job's to score goals.
Pablo, interesting thing about Pablo Mastroeni is that some guys are pure soccer guys. Jason Christ is a pure soccer guy. He walked into the Channel 2 studios once, one spring to do an interview, and he looked up and he saw Duke playing, and he went to Duke. He's like, is Duke winning? I was following the game in the first half, but I've been busy, and then, they were up like 5 early or whatever, What's going on now? So I told him, and I said something else about the tournament. He looked at me and goes, I don't know anything else about the tournament. I follow Duke basketball because I went to Duke, and we're really good at basketball, and I'm a front runner, and so I root for Duke basketball. He says, I don't know anything else. I live, breathe, and soccer all the time. And Dunny says the same thing. He'll follow the Clippers a little bit because he grew up in L.A. and everybody's a Laker fan. And Dunny, he's obstinate. He likes to go the other way. So he's, one of the 17 Clipper fans in Southern California. And so there's that. But Pablo loves the NFL and likes the NBA. Golfed once with his great story about golfing with George Karl. He really enjoyed that. George Karl played in Europe and said that he stole a lot of stuff from European soccer. He was at, I think he was at Real Madrid. Started recognizing some of what they did in 3-on-2, angles, spacing, and the way you create a 3v2 and overload an area. And he just saw a lot of the parallels. And he also loved the transition game in soccer because he loved the transition game in basketball. And so they had a lot of talks about that. And I told Pablo, I said, he started telling me something, I laughed. I said, that's something my basketball coach said once about you run hard and you give 100% on defense. Defense is all about this intensity and explosiveness and being everywhere and creating pressure and creating havoc. But you're more effective when you're attacking, when you're on offense, if you pace yourself and then use explosive movements. You should be going at half or 2/3 speed and then explode to the space. It's the change of pace that beats most defenders. And Pablo's like, absolutely. As a defensive midfielder, those guys were the ones that gave him problems. He said he says, if you see some 18-year-old kid come run it, you just know, okay, this kid's just running like crazy. He's going to run through the space too early. The timing's all off. He's just running around like nuts. It's like picking your spot. And who's excellent at that is Chicho. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times Chicho's on somebody's back shoulder and he doesn't look like he's moving, but he's just out of the line of sight, and then boom, he's into space and he's dangerous.
Yeah, Minnesota kind of reminds me of that. Speaking of our first round playoff matchup, they kind of run around a lot and do a lot of unnecessary running on offense. and almost to a fault. You know what I mean? That just seems like they mess up a lot of stuff by mistiming
Yeah.
their runs and things like that.
So the guy that I think you really have to watch, and I didn't think he was effective at all the last time they played, and I don't think, although I'm going to say this, and then Trey or Pablo or somebody's going to tell me I'm totally wrong, but I didn't think that Robin Lod was ineffective so much because of what RSL did. I didn't think Minnesota got him on the ball much. I do think that he's really effective as a deep line playmaker. I think probably not quite to the level of Hector Herrera in Houston, but he does remind me a lot of Herrera. When he's on the ball, it seems like he sees everything. And if anybody makes any mistake, he punishes it. He will, man, defensively, if you're ball watching, you are going to get beat. He's going to play in behind you. And it just seems like he makes more 25, 30, 35-yard passes that are perfectly weighted than just about anybody RSL plays against. But I didn't think he was on the ball enough in that game. And maybe it was something about RSL, and maybe the way they were shielding him with guys and taking away the passing lanes to him and kind of forcing him to other parts of the field. Maybe that was what happened. But I also thought there were times where Minnesota could have gotten the ball and let him work his magic, and for whatever reason they didn't, which I thought was a major benefit for RSL.
Yeah, yeah, and all you have to do is go back and watch that last game against St. Louis, and he was orchestrating. He even scored one. I mean, Lud on the ball is a scary thing, and to not let him be on the ball is fantastic. I think we played him 3 times this year. All 3 of them were ties. Kind of an interesting dynamic there.
And it's a lot like Houston. It's a lot like Houston last year in the fact that the deeper you get into the playoff series, you've seen so much of everybody that there's no mystery. You really get, the high IQ soccer players are just completely dialed in. They know each other forwards and backwards as you get deeper into this.
The other thing, too, that always concerns me, you were talking about schedule congestion. RSL doesn't seem to do well with breaks. It seems kind of
Agreed.
I can't think of the word. It just left my head, but it seems kind of like oxymoronic that it should be the opposite. You got a little bit of rest, you've got some practice, you should be ready to go. But oftentimes they just seem to come out flat after having a week or 2 off. So they're going to have
like
9 days or more from the last game until Tuesday when they play. So knock on wood, hopefully haven't jinxed anything, right? But
but if they find a way to win that, and remember they're going to go to penalties after 90 minutes. So we're done with the ties. There will be a winner. But if they win that, I think the turnaround's really short then for games 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think it goes Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday. Right?
No, there's a Friday. It's a Friday game.
Tuesday, Friday. Tuesday? Is something like that?
It's a Tuesday, Friday. Tuesday, Saturday, Friday is the way it goes. So it'll be 5 days and then 6 days. So, and I think you're right. I think RSL, the best part of the schedule the last 2 years has been when they're playing twice a week. Get the more midweek games, both times you get in May and June, and they've been flying when they've had a lot of midweek games. They're okay when they're playing once a week, and then when they get 2 days off, they get 12 days off, they get 19 days off. No, it messes everything up. There's a rhythm to it, and they got to play.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
So it is win for a game, right? Like there's a winner in each game, right?
There's a winner,
3-game series, right?
They play the 90 minutes. If it's tied, it goes to penalties. Same as last year with Houston, where 2 of the 3 games went to penalties. And RSL won the second game on penalties. They lost the first game in 90 minutes. And then they won on penalties in the second game and lost on penalties in the third.
Yeah.
So.
Yep,
So,
crazy.
Do you have any highlights of the season that stick out? Memories? We had the snow, another snowpocalypse. Any games that kind of
that game? That's it. To me, that's it. They bring out the orange ball. It's LAFC. The common thing in Utah, and there's overlap in the fan bases, and that's part of it. But Utah loved beating USC. Jazz fans love beating the Lakers. And RSL fans love beating LAFC and the LA Galaxy. Do you see a theme there? Do you see something working? all those LA teams have built-in advantages. There's more people, there's more money, right? And it's just they got built-in advantages. So when you're the underdog and you can take down the big dog, and let's face it, let's give all those credit teams their due. They do win a lot. They do have advantages built in, but you still got to do it. And they're all good, and that's why it's so sweet to take them down. And that game in the snow, and let's face it, it's entertainment. The snow games are fun. They're weird. If they played through the winter and they happened every week or twice every week, they wouldn't be weird. They wouldn't be unusual.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to see, well, that's probably not true. A lot of people don't want to see a movie when they know the ending, right?
Right.
That's why we're sports fans. Some of us watch sports and movies, but a lot of sports fans are like, yeah, I'm not in the movies, because when they go to the movies, they paid that movie star $20 million. They can't kill him in the first or second scene. They need the movie star for all 2 hours. And they don't dare kill him, because what if it turns into a franchise, right? You got to bring him back. You got to bring him back for the second and the third one. And in sports, we never really know. And so if anything weird or unusual happens, we love that. And the fact is, the deeper you get into sports, you do see patterns. You can start to predict things that are going to happen. And I think it's one of the charms of soccer is that the sport is wildly unpredictable, because as Pablo says, you do everything right, and then a shot hits the post and goes in, or it hits the post and goes out. And you got the hero and you got the GOAT. And it's a little, I think the word he used was whimsical. It's a little whimsical. So you never really know.
Yep, Andres Snowmez, right? And then Ojeda with the late red card. I mean, that was a crazy, crazy game.
Yeah. I don't know if I went for a second or a third game after that. Well, a Vancouver game would probably be up there. You just have to deduct points because they won on a crazy own goal, which was hilarious and all that. But it's better to win when, Anderson Julio takes some 40-yard ball over the top, pops it up to himself, sends the two defenders on skates into the concrete in the north end, and then basically volleys it to himself and bangs into the net for the game winner. That is still one of the most spectacular goals I've ever seen in RSL. Rubio Rubin on the bike against San Jose, but they lost the game, so that took some of the steam out of that. How about Chicho? Other moments, Chicho from midfield, and then Anderson Julio from midfield. I thought it was pretty awesome when Pablo Ruiz did a year ago at DC United, but then we saw two guys do it this year. But I just think we're going to see more of that. That's part of the risk teams take when they use the goalkeeper, kind of the keeper sweeper role and bring him into the attack. Well, to do that, they've got to come 18, 20, 25 yards out from goal. And so there's always that opportunity there. So maybe we'll see more of it.
Yeah, and this might be heresy a little bit, but I was glad to see the Rocky Mountain Cup come back alive. The rivalry. I'm hoping that, Colorado winning it. I mean, you want to win every year, but that gets boring. I would rather see, doesn't it? I would rather see an actual rivalry with a club. RSL doesn't have a real
beat up your little brother.
I can already see Tyler's the guy who says, "Give them hope," and then rip it away.
Yes,
you don't
exactly
need 4-0.
right.
You don't need 4-0 every game. That does get boring. But let them have the lead in the 80th minute, and then score twice and rip it away.
Exactly. That's what you want to do to your little brother, right?
Oh, I see. Nice. Yeah.
Oh, so quite a
That
game.
was a little heresy.
Year.
That was a little heresy, Brand.
Yeah. But I want to. RSL doesn't have a real rival. I mean, there's teams I hate with a passion, Portland and Kansas City, but the bite from the Kansas City rivalry has kind of disappeared with those players retiring and no longer around. So
yeah, I think that's the nature of pro sports. There's very few rivalries. Portland, Seattle. I even think that San Jose and the Galaxy had a good thing going, but with LAFC showing up, San Jose's kind of little brother like, "Yay, we got a rivalry." In the Galaxy, no, we're busy hating LAFC. We don't have time for you.
They're like Cousin Oliver from Brady Bunch or whatever his name was.
Wow, old school reference right there.
There you go.
Old school reference. So the San Jose Earthquakes are Cousin Oliver. Yeah, but they moved that thing to Oakland once. They moved it to Stanford multiple times. I think they put it in the Niners' new stadium in Santa Clara once. But it just seems like it doesn't have the same bite. But that's because the Galaxy games with LAFC have just been outstanding. I mean, it's
and
great.
San Jose has just been awful for too long.
Well, back to RSL. San Jose brought up two guys through their academy. Didn't keep either one. Both guys went to the USL. RSL signed both, and now they've moved one, Fidel Barajas, to Mexico for big money. And presumably Diego Luna, I don't know, in one of the next 2 or 3 transfer windows, maybe the next one, I don't know, will make a similar move. He seems to be on track to do it at some point, the way he's playing.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Good work, Earthquakes. Thanks.
we love Diego. We love to see players like Diego. And we got Chicho. I love seeing players of Chicho's quality find a home and stay there for a while. That's always nice when a player finds a home, especially when you expect to play somewhere more like where he came from with LAFC. And I think Chicho has a really big opportunity to be someone that will matter in RSL history if he sticks around and finds his form again.
Or if he bangs 5 or 6 goals into the back of the net in the playoffs and they hoist the cup, then it won't take a lot of years. He'll just do it this year.
Yeah, that'd be nice. So since you're bringing up, what's your prediction for the playoffs for RSL? How far are we going? Are they lifting the cup?
I think they should get past Minnesota, and after that, I don't have the first clue. At that point, you get down to 90 minutes, and it just seems like a coin toss. I think that RSL has always been comfortable going to LA for whatever reason. Multiple RSL teams have performed really well there. They had the Galaxy this year. They had them. They had them. And they give up 2 late goals and only take 1 point there. I thought, actually, the game they lost here to the Galaxy was one of the more disappointing games of the year.
That was a big heartbreaker, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that they match up well enough. I think the game's a coin toss, and it's just, in that moment, does somebody put the ball on frame or do they put it just wide? It's a game of inches. So I feel like that's a toss-up, and then after that, we'll see. We can sit here and say they ought to play LFC, and LFC is really good, and they're the 1 seed, so if they're in a conference final, I'm not surprised. But if we've learned anything about the MLS playoffs, there's going to be upsets, and 1 seeds go down, and it doesn't seem to make any sense. So, I don't know.
You're not going to predict Andrew Brody getting his revenge in the MLS final against Miami?
Nice.
Getting chipped?
Nice.
Probably not.
Yeah. I don't think you can do that. I do think that in the East, Miami, Cincinnati, and Columbus are head and shoulders. I'd be really surprised if anyone else can beat 2 of those 3 teams. And I don't know who the 6th seed is in the East, but the 6 and the 7 seeds would presumably have to play all 3 of them. That would just be horrific. I mean, I would think that it's got to be one of those 3.
Yeah, for sure.
NYCFC is 6, Red Bull 7.
Okay, great draws for the New York clubs. I mean, that's just a miserable. Exactly. Tyler, make that face again. That says it all, really. We don't need words. That face alone. I mean, that's just horrific that you would open up with Cincinnati or Columbus, then get the other one, and then get Messi in the conference final. Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's New York's year. I mean, the Liberty won. They finally won.
And the Yankees are in the World Series, and that's enough. So it's not going to – I can't believe that would happen. It does seem a little more wide open in the West. I think that Seattle – I think RSL has to love the fact that LAFC, Seattle, and Houston all went to the other side of the bracket. That's got to be awesome for RSL. And I think the other thing is that if RSL does face Seattle in the conference final, RSL will have home field. That series has been dominated by home field, so you definitely want it if those 2 get through to the conference final. But it's worrying about that now seems like a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's just you got 3 weeks here. You got to figure out how to get past Minnesota, and then see if there are any upsets and see where things stand there.
So, and a couple of last questions: is this season a success? How would you rate this season for RSL? Is it already just kind of with the?
I think it's a huge success. I think the club's in a different place internationally and with scouts and with foreign clubs because they're recognized as a team that's doing a good job of developing young players. I think that's going to help them attract more talent going forward. They'll have to keep doing this. You can't just send 2 guys and then you're good. Beavers and Luna would seem to be 2 guys who would be up next. But Fidel Barajas beat the timeline, so who's to say? Maybe Marchuk will beat the timeline and move along quickly. But I think that it's a success now because the clubs around the world are looking at the league differently and they're looking at RSL differently. It's going to help RSL attract talent. It's going to help RSL generate revenue, which will help them sign presumably even better talent. So I think that's a big win. And I think when you set the regular season record, that's quality over 34 games. The playoffs is where the prestige is, but are you good or are you not good? 34 games tells you you got to be pretty good or you don't get to 59 points. You know, I've always thought that 50 points is the number to hit. If you hit 50, you're a pretty good club. If you get to 59, you're really good. Right? Now, will they get out of the playoffs? That's what everybody wants. Will they get out of the West and get back to an MLS Cup for the first time since 2013? Remains to be seen. You know, both the Galaxy and the LAFC are really good, and they're not the only really good teams in the West. I barely got off the fence there, I know, but I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to lie to you. And these playoffs historically are just wildly unpredictable, right? I mean, the last time RSL was in the Western Conference Final against Portland, they weren't supposed to be anywhere near that, and they got beaten in the conference final. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Portland was a 3 seed and New York was a 4 seed, and New York went to Portland and won it, right?
Yep.
So there's a 3 and a 4 seed. I mean,
Yeah, that's the year I went to Portland and saw Aaron Herrera gift them 2 goals and get red carded in that game. It was so sad.
sorry, I had to bring up that memory, Tyler.
That's right. I traveled all the way, drove through the night, big sacrifice for my team. But whatever. It was fine.
And they
It was
let
a
you
good
down.
memory. Good memory.
Well, David, we cannot thank you enough for joining us. We always love your points, your thoughts, and just the beautiful way you talk about sports is greatly appreciated. You are a credible professional, and we appreciate you.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me, and we'll do it again in the future.
Thanks so much.
Okay.